and 1 death. The Premier warns the worst is yet to come.
I'll be shocked if it's less than 100 this time tomorrow of additional new cases.
Also ahead, Victorians told to leave New South Wales immediately as border closures loom. The federal government unveils a revamped ad campaign to get more Australians vaccinated.
Australia's Ash Barty is Wimbledon champion.
And a homegrown hero, Ash Barty, joins the exclusive club of Wimbledon greats. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Miriam Korawa. The New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian has warned the coronavirus outbreak in Greater Sydney will get worse, with the number of new infections expected to reach triple figures in the coming days. In the past 24 hours, the state has recorded 77 locally acquired cases from more than 48,000 tests. A woman aged in her 90s from southwest Sydney has died in hospital. A total of 52 people are now in hospital. 15 of those are in intensive care. Police have issued 106 infringement notices to people flouting restrictions. Let's now cross live to our reporter Alison Zhao, who's at Liverpool Hospital in Sydney's southwest. So Alison, just take us through the latest figures and developments in today's press conference.
Miriam, it's been another very sobering press conference today with the tragic news that a 90-year-old woman has died from COVID-19 at Liverpool Hospital yesterday. She is the first death from COVID-19 in New South Wales since last December and is the first death in this outbreak and of 2021. She was only diagnosed and returned a positive test yesterday morning and passed away. She was a household contact of a case in southwestern Sydney, and we understand that she was not vaccinated. The daily case numbers have also continued to rise, with 77 cases reported. Of those, 42 people were out and about in the community while they were infectious, and the source of 20 cases is still under investigation. The health authorities also say that the case numbers in southwestern Sydney are extraordinarily high, and they've been urging people to go and get tested. They also say that they don't want complacency to set in anywhere else in the state. Let's take a listen to what Premier Gladys Berejiklian had to say.
I'll be shocked if it's less than 100 this time tomorrow of additional new cases. So we can't stress enough the importance of not only following the rules, but also realising the risk that the people who will suffer the most is, if you don't worry about yourself, that's fine. Even though it's affecting people of all age groups. If you don't worry about yourself, that's your decision. But think about your closest family members, your closest people in your life. They're the people that are most impacted.
Gladys Berejiklian there. Now, Alison, the Chief Health Officer, has issued a frank warning over household transmission.
Public health authorities are really worried about the continued spread of COVID-19. The Premier says that she expects to see the numbers of cases go into above 100 tomorrow and in the days thereafter. So they don't expect to see a turnaround of cases, and that's because of the high amount of transmission between family members of different households. Of today's 77 cases, 50 of those were close family members, and that's meant that the Chief Health Officer, Dr. Kerry Chant, has issued a stern warning to people not to think of the family unit as their extended family of aunts and uncles and cousins, but instead only the people they live with. And she says that people who are catching up with relatives indoors is just a recipe to spread COVID-19, and she says this is an urgent and serious message that the community needs to hear. There's also a message to essential workers, including tradies and construction workers, and they've been told to go and get a test, especially if they've been working on multiple sites or in southwestern Sydney. Now, the frequency of how often they get tested hasn't been determined, but they've just told them for the moment, go and get tested before you go and work again, just to make sure that you don't have the virus and are spreading it. They've also continued to issue the message of the people who are in hospital with COVID-19, with 52 cases in hospital. 15 of those are in the ICU and 5 of them are on a ventilator. And of the people in ICU, there's one teenager, one in their 20s, one in their 30s. So this virus is definitely still affecting young people as well as the elderly. And the chief health officer says that if you do truly love your loved ones, then you need to make sure that you don't mingle with them, don't visit them. And this is a little bit of what she had to say earlier.
I need to give frank advice that the case numbers in southwestern Sydney are extraordinarily high. We know transmission is going through households, from household to household, and impacting on other close friends. So that indicator we've talked about infectious in the community, we want to see that turn around as quickly as possible, and it's really important that everyone plays their part.
That was Dr. Kerry Chant there. Alison, dozens of infringement notices have also been handed out right across the state. What details can you give us?
Well, police are growing frustrated with people who are continuing to flout the rules. Yesterday, they issued 106 infringement notices. That's down from the previous day's 176, but they still say that too many people are breaking the rules, and the infringement notices are stretching all across the state, including 6 people in Orange, 8 people in King's Cross, and penalties in Penrith and across Sydney's southwest. They also highlighted a few of their more egregious breaches of the public health order, including a gathering of about 15 people in a unit in Marrickville where people aged between 50 and 90 were just playing cards. And they say that this was a clear breach of the lockdown order. Also, there was an 18th birthday party in Auburn where 10 people attended the gathering, and in Maryland's a group of young people were found in a garage playing PlayStation. So police say that they're getting tired of this, that they're going to start being more firm than fair, and that they've given a lot of warnings out to people, but now they will go harder on people who are breaking those rules.
Police have always said that they will be firm but fair. We are now in a position where we need to be much more firmer than fairer. People understand the orders more and more, and police are just getting a little tired of people that disguise their behaviour around the orders to try and get some legitimacy to it.
Now, Alison, what do all the latest developments mean for the Greater Sydney lockdown?
Well, the Premier has been warning people that the lockdown is unlikely to lift by next Friday, especially as these case numbers continue to rise. She's already ruled out letting the Delta variant run rampant through New South Wales. And although we were questioning her about whether this was going to be an indefinite lockdown, she wouldn't be drawn on when exactly she would extend the lockdown. She says she's waiting for health advice. And so there's no guarantee on whether students will end up going back to school on July 19. There's also no guarantee about when businesses will be able to reopen, when foot traffic and normality will re-enter the state. The Premier has been saying that the government is working on a support package for businesses, and those grants of up to $10,000 which were offered to businesses will be available on the Service New South Wales website from July 19. And those $10,000 grants were from a package when they thought the lockdown would only be 2 weeks. So now that we know that this lockdown is going to be indeed longer than that they are working on another support package for businesses to try to give more urgent support and help those businesses which are struggling to survive through this long and prolonged lockdown.
Our reporter Alison Zhao there from Liverpool in Sydney. We're now joined by Dr. Omar Khorshid, who is the president of the Australian Medical Association. Welcome to ABC News, Dr. Khorshid. Those infection rates that we've been hearing about in today's numbers and the expectation that they will be above 100 new local cases tomorrow. What's your assessment of the way that this outbreak is now unfolding?
What we're seeing is the numbers going exactly the way we didn't want them to go. They're continuing to go up, although we do have to recognise that we are seeing cases from 5-6 days ago now being reflected in the numbers. So the next 2 to 3 days will be absolutely critical to see whether the new extended restrictions are actually working, or do the numbers continue to go the wrong way, in which case New South Wales is going to have to go another step to actually really severely limit people's movements in order to get on top of the virus. It cannot be let to continue like this because the bigger the numbers, the less chance contact tracers will be able to get ahead of the virus.
So in your opinion, we perhaps need to go even further than we currently are with our lockdown restrictions?
If the numbers don't start to look better in the next 2 to 3 days, absolutely. If they keep going up, then they're just going to keep going up. You have to change something. And at the moment, probably the only lever left is really to force the closure of all retail and other businesses that aren't absolutely essential in order to get those numbers actually to start trending downwards rather than continuing to climb.
Okay, well, among the latest developments, we have 52 people in hospital and one person has now died in this latest outbreak. What do you make of the cases that we're seeing which require medical treatment? Largely, they are people who aren't fully vaccinated and, of course, a lot of younger people.
Yeah, it is interesting to see younger people ending up in hospital. We've seen it overseas, and it's a little different to what we saw with the Victorian outbreak, with the vast bulk of people getting severely ill being those in those elderly years. The hospitalisation rate is 10%, which is really high. And of course, tragically, we've seen a death as well as some young people seriously ill in the intensive care unit. So I'm not sure there's a bigger wake-up call for anybody around the country as to just how severe this virus is. And even in a lockdown, it is continuing to spread. That's why it's absolutely critical that people go out and get vaccinated. It's the only way to protect themselves and to protect the country from what's unfolding now in Sydney.
It is a critical message. And just in terms of what we're anticipating with case numbers rising, particularly given that a number of the latest cases are still people who've been active in the community while infectious, how well placed are medical facilities for a surge in those sorts of case numbers where hospitalisation is required?
So normally our hospitals right around the country run totally full, 100% capacity all the time with ambulances parked outside the front. Now, in a lockdown, it does actually reduce demand on hospitals a little bit. So although I haven't got any data, I would imagine that New South Wales hospitals do have a little bit of capacity now to deal with a small increase in numbers. But if the lockdown was relaxed and if you started to get thousands of cases instead of hundreds of cases, very quickly you'll see an extraordinary impact on hospitals, and we'll see all this, the things that we've been fighting so hard to avoid for the whole 18 months of this crisis so far.
Now, you rightly pointed out the importance of vaccinations. Just take us through where you believe we need to be. There's been a lot of critique around the rollout, whether there's been enough done, and also, of course, the changing medical advice around vaccinations. We've had another change as well today with the Chief Health Officer, Terry Chance, saying that those who've received their first dose of AstraZeneca are now encouraged to only wait a 6-week period before getting a second dose. What's your assessment of the way the vaccination rollout period has been approached and the changing advice that's being offered?
I think we certainly recognise that the changing advice is confusing people, and for some it adds to that hesitancy. Are they certain that the authorities know what they're talking about when the advice keeps changing? But we only need to look overseas to see just how successful vaccination has been, including the AstraZeneca vaccine, which has really transformed the United Kingdom, for instance, which has largely relied on that vaccine. And of course, we're seeing in many other countries them now starting to open up, just as we in Australia are starting to lock down. So we've got a long way to go, but we're always going to have fairly poor numbers now because we were relying on AZ with a 3-month duration between the doses. So even the highest risk in the community who had their AZ 2 to 3 months ago are still waiting for their second dose. And this change, although it is annoying, I think, for GPs and confusing for the public, it recognises the risks now in Sydney. And the absolutely critical thing with Delta is to have that second dose. So certainly if you waited more than 6 weeks, you will get a good immune response. And I would echo that advice from New South Wales today, which matches that from the Prime Minister a few days ago.
Do we have enough supply going to where it's really needed at this point in time?
We certainly have seen some increased vaccine supply going into New South Wales, and depending on how this outbreak pans out, I'm sure the federal government will do what it needs to make sure that vaccination centres and GPs throughout New South Wales have got the vaccine supplies that they need. We have lots of AstraZeneca in the country, so there's really no shortage of that, and it can be channelled into New South Wales if people are willing to roll up their sleeves and get that vaccine. Of course, really the second doses are the critical ones. The job isn't done yet with the most vulnerable, though. We've still got a significant proportion of those people over the age of 70, of aged care workers and disability workers who've not yet been vaccinated. And we're already seeing in this outbreak the results of that with at least one outbreak in a nursing home already. So that job has to be finished. But then, of course, we need to continue the Pfizer rollout into the younger people because they're not immune from COVID and they're ending up critically ill in hospital. And that's something we absolutely must avoid.
Well, in terms of how we approach the vaccination strategy, we've had a new ad campaign which has launched today. What do you make of efforts being made on that front? Because, as you mentioned, hesitancy has been a huge factor in keeping those rates of vaccination lower than expected.
Yeah, it's certainly great to see the government actually spending some money on advertising this campaign. It is the way for Australia to emerge from the pandemic, and we need to get that message, a very simple message, that this is our way out. We've all got to do it, no matter what our fears or thoughts are, no matter whether we feel vulnerable to COVID or not. This is our way back to a relatively normal life, and this is the way to protect the vulnerable in the community. Just to really grasp that community spirit, we're all in it together. Let's go and do the one thing that we can all do right around the country today, even if we're not in lockdown, which is to go and get vaccinated.
Dr. Omar Khurshid with the Medical Association of Australia, thank you so much for speaking with us on ABC News.
Thanks, man.
Victoria has recorded its 11th straight day of no new locally acquired coronavirus cases, with high-level discussions continuing over the potential closure of the New South Wales-Victoria border. Health authorities say anyone in regional New South Wales who wants to come home to Victoria needs to do so now in case the entire state becomes declared a red zone. Victoria's COVID testing commander says red zones already in place in parts of New South Wales could be extended to cover the entire state as Sydney's outbreak worsens. The federal government has unveiled a revamped advertising campaign urging Australians to get vaccinated. Public health experts and the federal opposition have been calling for a stronger information campaign to encourage vaccine uptake. For more, political reporter Noor Haider joins us now from Parliament House. Noor, what can people expect to see in this latest campaign?
Yeah, good afternoon, Miriam. Well, the federal government has been under pressure for some months now to release a revamped, a stronger public information campaign to encourage Australians to go out and to get vaccinated. The existing campaign features the former Deputy Medical Officer Nick Coatsworth walking through a hospital encouraging people to get vaccinated, and that has been criticised by some as being lacklustre when compared to some advertising campaigns overseas. In the United States, they've used all former living presidents, except for one, Donald Trump, to encourage people in the United States to get vaccinated. That includes Barack Obama and George W. Bush. In the United Kingdom, they've turned to the star power of Elton John and Michael Caine to encourage their citizens to get vaccinated. And in places like Singapore and New Zealand, they've turned to more creative measures using singing and dancing ensembles in their TV campaigns to build that sort of community morale around getting the jab. In Australia, though, the government has been criticised for not thinking creatively about this. They've launched a new campaign today. It'll feature on TV, on radio, online and on social media. The central message of this campaign will be to, quote, arm yourself. It features people pulling up their sleeve and revealing their band-aid after getting immunised. Take a listen to the full campaign.
A COVID-19 vaccine is your best defence and our only way forward. Now's the time to arm yourself, your family, your friends, your workmates, your community, someone you love. Find out when you can arm yourself and book your vaccination. Go to australia.gov.au.
So, Noor, how has that ad been received so far?
Well, Miriam, the federal opposition leader didn't wait very long before expressing that he wasn't particularly impressed by this campaign that has been called for some time. The Prime Minister last week said that this campaign was sort of scheduled or timed to coincide with an increase in supplies of the Pfizer vaccine. We do know that the supplies of that particular vaccine, which will be probably the most prevalent used in Australia, are due to progressively increase throughout the course of this month, reaching about 1 million doses a week in the second half of July. And the government has been in the past reluctant, it says, to encourage too many people to get vaccinated because the supply was not necessarily there to meet demand. And now the government says that this campaign is there and coincides with the fact that supplies will increase. But the opposition leader Anthony Albanese this morning, speaking on Insiders, says he doesn't think that this ad cuts it. Take a listen to what he had to say.
What we need is actually taking the expertise that Australia has always done so well. We were the best in the world at the campaign against AIDS. We've done drink driving very well. But after 18 months, if this is the best they can do, I think they need to go back to the drawing board.
Now, we are expecting to hear a little later this afternoon from the head of the government's COVID-19 vaccine task force, Lieutenant General John Fruin, and he'll speak a little bit more about this campaign. And we do understand that it will be tailored to target culturally and linguistically diverse communities, which we know there have been concerns that there may be hesitancy sort of seeding within those communities. So we'll hear from him later today.
Political reporter Noor Haydar there with the details from Canberra. A baby has died after being attacked by a dog on the New South Wales Central Coast. Emergency services were called to a house at Carryong early this morning but were unable to save the 5-week-old boy who died at the scene. The family-owned dog has been secured. Police say the baby's parents were at home at the time of the attack.
Our thoughts are certainly with the parents, the family, friends, and also the first responders involved in this incident. This is a matter of tragic proportions. And it is subject to investigation, and we'll be making a report to the coroner. In relation to the dog involved, it is a registered animal. It is an American Staffy, and that dog has been seized by council, and I believe the animal will be euthanased today or in the coming days.
Overseas now, police in Bangladesh have made another arrest following a factory fire that killed 50 people. Abul Hasham, the owner of the food and drinks processing factory, is one of 8 people arrested so far. Authorities say most of the victims died because the only exit from the building had been blocked. Extreme heat is building in the United States and Canada, with forecasts of record-breaking temperatures in California and Nevada. California's Death Valley recorded a high of 54 degrees Celsius on Friday, with similar heat expected today. In Canada, researchers estimate over 1 billion marine animals have died due to the heat.
Basically cooked the oysters, clams, mussels. Most of the mussels around here now are all gone. My clams, you can see the sand dollars and stuff, are all dead.
The combination of a record-breaking heat wave and these low tides that were happening kind of in the middle of the day were just absolutely frying a lot of the seaweeds and kelp. It really just goes to show that climate change is happening now, and we're already seeing the effects of it.
Now it is time for sport with Jared Coote.
Australia's Ashley Barty has won her first Wimbledon title after defeating Karolina Pliskova in the women's singles final. The Queenslander triumphed 6-3, 6-7, 6-3 in just under 2 hours against the tournament 8th seed. It's the second Grand Slam title of Barty's career. After her win at the French Open in 2019, the last Australian woman to win the Wimbledon singles title was Siobhan Goolagong-Cawley in 1980.
Australians have such a rich history in sport, and I think being able to be a very small part of that is something I always dreamt of, is to try and create a legacy and try and create a path for young girls and boys to believe in their dreams, and being able to kind of live through that and learn my lessons along the way has been some of the best parts of my journey. And I think to be able to be successful here at Wimbledon, to achieve my biggest dream has been absolutely incredible, and the stars aligned for me over the past fortnight, and incredible that it happened to fall on the 50th anniversary of Yvonne's first title here too. It was absolutely incredible.
Dylan Alcott continued his perfect season at the All England club. Overnight, the Australian claimed his second Wimbledon quad wheelchair singles title with a straight sets win over Dutchman Sam Schroeder. Alcott triumphed 6-2, 6-2 in the decider to add the Wimbledon crown to the Australian and French Open titles he's already won this year. The 30-year-old only needs to win Paralympic gold in Tokyo and the US Open later this year to complete a golden slam. The Wimbledon victory was Alcott's 14th major singles championship. And Argentina are the new South American champions after winning the Copa America tournament this morning. Angel Di Maria scored the winner in a 1-0 victory over Brazil. The win was captain Lionel Messi's first international tournament victory. The European Championship final between England and Italy will be played tomorrow morning.
On the satellite image, a trough and offshore low are causing showers, gusty winds and hazardous surf in parts of eastern New South Wales. A trough and cold front passing South Australia is bringing areas of rain in the south. Mostly clear elsewhere under a high pressure ridge, with dry winds increasing fire danger in the Northern Territory. Looking around the country, mostly sunny and mild in Queensland's east. The odd shower in the far north, sunny and cool in the west. In New South Wales and the ACT, isolated showers and cold in the northeast. Fog then mostly sunny in the south, mainly fine and cool in the northwest. Late showers and cold in Victoria's southwest. Fog then sunshine in the east, mostly cloudy and cool in the northwest. Mainly sunny and cold in Tasmania's south. Fog also expected in the southeast. Isolated showers and breezy, cold in the state's north. In South Australia, a late shower and cool in the southeast. Showers and cold conditions in central regions. Mostly sunny and mild in the west and north. In WA, mostly sunny and cool in the south. Sunny and cool also in the northwest. Mainly fine and warm in the northeast. Mostly sunny and warm in the NT's north. Sunny and mild over the interior and mostly fine in the south. And that is the latest from ABC News. I'm Miriam Korowa. Thank you for your company.